Just what happened to a family that inhabited a mansion in New York in the 1970s, of whom just seemingly disappeared, and the mansion has not been put to use ever since. And how come in a city like New York, no one ever knew that this mansion existed until now? Welcome to Peculiar Occurrences. I am your host, Lilith Nova.
A Peculiar Occurrence fan? Well, I've opened up a store just for you. So head on over and buy your Peculiar Occurrence gear today. Links are in the description box below. Thank you.
New York City is one of the most populated cities in the world, and the largest city in the United States. With a population of 8.5 million people, this means this one city has more residents in it than over 100 different countries. That's right, there are more New Yorkers than there is of people living in all of Switzerland. But with so many people comes a major issue that the city is constantly struggling with. Housing. Where are you supposed to house so many people? There are only so many apartments in New York City. In January of 2018, there was 63,101 homeless people, including 15,553 homeless families, with 23,309 homeless children sleeping each night in the New York City municipal shelter system, and families make up 3/4 of the homeless population. One way to deal with this would be to take existing structures and subdivide them into smaller units, apartments for these people. But this can be a dangerous and sometimes illegal act, where apartments are split using badly constructed walls. A lot of times you can only fit one bed in there, and not much else. Some places even have shared bathrooms. Another way to deal with this would be to demolish old, shorter structures to build taller structures that can fit more people. But on a small island like Manhattan, this could mean snarling up traffic patterns that last years in order to get these buildings built. But even with these ideas, the population of New York is exploding like a supernova. Only this has no end in sight. If only there was some sort of huge plot of land just sitting outside of New York somewhere, ready and waiting for an apartment building to be built on it. That would definitely help some of the homeless problems in New York. Except there is indeed a place just like that, sitting right outside of New York. The city. New York City. Yeah. Sitting right outside of New York City, just rotting away in the woods in Manhattan, is a huge abandoned mansion. No one is even taking care of the 57-room mansion sitting on 6 acres of prime property. 6 huge acres that could be turned into tiny house plots or an apartment building or something for the homeless. And this place would have remained a secret if not for an award-winning photographer who came across it. And I'm about to butcher his name. Brian Sincervio. You know what? I'll just give you text of it. Brian loves to take pictures of crumbled buildings and roads, and even did a short film about an abandoned psych ward in New York called Shadows of King Park. In this case, Brian was given exclusive access to photograph the inside of this abandoned building. The decaying building was first constructed in the 1930s, and it saw people living in it all the way up until the 1970s. No one else really knows who the owners of this property is or why it was abandoned. It is quite a place too. The place even holds an indoor tennis court and bowling alley. And it's so close to Manhattan that it is shocking that no one has turned this place into a luxury hotel or a shelter for the homeless. The mansion is huge and was probably well known in the 1950s and 1960s. However, what the building was actually used for remains a complete mystery. After a little digging around, it turns out the building does belong to someone, but the owner is very reclusive and doesn't let out his name, and he has a hobby, of buying up large estates like this just to watch them decay and fall apart. The man has several large properties all around New York just like this one. And he truly chooses to stay anonymous. I checked all over the internet for who currently owns this property and who used to own this property. I could not find a single article that stated any of the owners of this property. All of that information is a peculiar mystery that may never be solved. What is really crazy is it seems like the entirety of the mansion was completely abandoned in a mad rush. Nothing about this seems normal. As a matter of fact, there was so much stuff left behind, it seems like the owners had to flee like refugees from a war. The original owners' clothing, toys, books, furniture are all still there. And from the items laying around, you could definitely tell it was a woman with children who lived here, or at least one woman with several children who lived here. It really makes you wonder what happened to her. Perhaps it once belonged to a mob that had to flee before they were busted, or they thought they were going to be busted. Let's just hope that they didn't flee due to asbestos. One reason we can tell that there was at least a woman living here is there were shoes arranged neatly in a closet of one of the bedrooms. The shoes are in the slingback style and are in all kinds of colors and patterns. Interestingly enough, there does not seem to be any sneakers. Perhaps she wasn't as avid as a tennis player as the others. Or perhaps she wore her sneakers when she abandoned the building. Either way, this definitely feeds into the stereotype that women love shoe shopping. And the reason we believe that there are several children is because there were toys found all throughout the mansion, including dolls and even a mint condition baby stroller. Perhaps they were toddlers, or perhaps they were just young children. In any place, the abandoned toys certainly give the place a creepy feel. What happened to all the children? And how come no one can find records of all the children who lived here? Perhaps the house had a more sinister side, but let's hope not. And based on all the signs, there seem to also have been children that were at least in grade school. In fact, there was even a trunk found that was probably used when they were sent away to private boarding school. It's a private boarding school trunk. Something in which many wealthy families in the area at the time used to do. And in which many still do. Additionally, this creepy picture of the boy here, was this someone who lived in the house? Or perhaps this was a boarding school of some kind, and this was one of the students that attended it. Another picture that would suggest that this might be some sort of boarding school, or they could have homeschooled their children, was the appearance of old steel school desks. And it is clear from the layers of chipped away paint that this room was kept up with very well, at least until it wasn't anymore. One of the more interesting parts of the house is that it had an extensive library. There are dozens, if not hundreds of books that have simply been left and abandoned. This only serves to prove one of two things. If this was a family home, the family put great importance on education. Or if this was a boarding school, then the children had plenty of reading material. Could you imagine curling up on that couch right there and reading a good book? Despite that the mansion sits on one of the most densely populated cities in America, there is actually very little structural and interior damage done to the property. While there is some graffiti here and there, the property's mostly been left alone and forgotten about. In fact, there are gorgeous blue rugs, pianos, and even a suitcase sitting right there on top of a couch, left alone for years. The only real damage to this room seems to be the broken mirror, though the appearance of so many pianos indicates that someone definitely played, or perhaps this was used as some sort of music room if it was a boarding school. Perhaps one of the coolest parts of the house is the indoor tennis court, and the roof is covered with glass to let in light. The windows could even be shut, and this place could potentially be turned into a greenhouse during the winter months to feed a population of homeless people, and they can be open during the summer to let in the cool air. But nowadays it seems the tennis court has been turned into little more than a junkyard, with stoves and refrigerators and even an old car sitting in the back. Just imagine if this was turned into a place for the homeless. How many people could be fit in this room alone? Or, like I said before, it could be turned into a self-sustaining garden to feed the homeless. The house has been decorated in a way that would suggest that it was always owned by the family of the people who built it and passed down from generation to generation, with furniture and decorations showing off different time eras. There's everything inside this house, from Victorian furniture and wall decorations to 70s shag carpet. There are bold printed wallpaper in the rooms with gold finish and Victorian style trophy cases. It is very interesting that the people who once lived in this house had almost 100 years of design left in it. Another interesting way to date the house and the people who lived in it is to look at the evolution of chairs in the house. There are chairs in there dating all the way back to the 1930s and going through to the 1970s. There are the bamboo chairs from the Art Deco movement, bold colors from the 1950s and 1960s, and even the brownish mustard yellow chairs of the 70s. Again, this would suggest that the same family may have lived here and passed down the property. This picture shows a children's rocking horse that is resting in between two couches which are slowly but surely disintegrating. But what may be even more interesting is the way that snow and the outside forces has been able to enter the house through this window, even though there's still a curtain. And with this happening, soon the earth will reclaim this place. Such a senseless waste of space that could be going to house dozens of homeless families. Even though there were very little televisions in homes in the 1930s when this house was built. It is very interesting to note that there was almost no TVs in the entirety of the entire house. But it would appear that this mansion was in fact a place of musical talent, as there were several record players, radios, and other musical instruments scattered all across the house. Perhaps we have a hideaway for musicians here, or some kind of speakeasy. There was supposed to be several bars. This picture actually shows an abandoned armchair sitting in front of an old abandoned TV. with paintings hanging on the walls that are slowly decaying. Sadly, someone spray painted over it. With boxes laying around as if they tried to pack. Was this house perhaps foreclosed on by a bank? Did they owe a mortgage? Was it repossessed and the owners had no time to get their things out? We may never know. Why does this house have a player piano in it? For those of you that don't know what a player piano is, they're a piano that works on an electrical current and play themselves. You know, like the creepy pianos in old scary movies and westerns and stuff. They were creepy enough when they were created in the 1870s or 1840s. A patent was actually submitted for them in the 1840s. The official date of creation, 1870s. It's interesting that such a musical house would have a piano that plays all by itself. It seems that before the original owners left the house, they tried to do a few renovations to try to raise the price of the house. This is evident by the ladders and drop sheets that spread throughout the house. Or perhaps the current owner at one time wanted to see it redone, but now only wishes to see it rot. But it is evident that at some point, someone tried to save this house. Only adding to the creepiness of the house is a doll sitting on the couch. I mean, who put that freaking doll there, man? Is there, like, children ghosts playing with the dolls? Ooh. I mean, it seems like no one has been in the house for years. How is it the doll has not fallen over yet? But with us not knowing anything about the house, a lot of deaths could have happened on this property. Perhaps the doll is not alone. All I know for sure is that doll staring at me is very peculiar and I don't like it. So what do you think about this peculiar occurrence? Why did the owners need so many rooms? And why did they just take off and leave all their belongings behind? And why is the current wealthy owner buying up so many mansions just to watch them rot when they could go to house homeless people? How does it make you feel that these properties are not being put to better use? Let me know down in the comments below. And while you're down there, check out my Peculiar Occurrence merch or my Lilith Nova store merch. As well, hit that thumbs up button, hit that little bell button if you want to know when I upload, and please, please subscribe to me. I'd love to have you as part of my peculiar, spooky squad. And until next time, keep your eyes peeled for all things peculiar. Yeah! My voice is almost back.
A Peculiar Occurrence fan? Well, I've opened up a store just for you. So head on over and buy your Peculiar Occurrence gear today. Links are in the description box below. Thank you.
Are you listening? Damn. Yeah. Yeah.